This is part 2 and the final part of a collaborative effort with Reclaimer Gaming. The link to part 1 can be found in the description, as both are a narrative exploration of what if the Heretic leader managed to convince the Arbiter that the Great Journey was a lie. Let's get straight into it. The turbulent atmosphere of Threshold shook the Phantom mercilessly as it rose higher and higher through the atmosphere, until eventually they crossed the invisible boundary between the planet and space. The Phantom fell silent. Thel, after standing in bewildered discomfort for the past few minutes, broke his fixated gaze upon the Oracle and instead fixed his focus on Caesar, the heretic he had been sent to kill for the crime of knowing the truth. Despite his many decades of faithful service to the Covenant, the gods, and the prophets, something in his gut told him that this was always where he would end up, opposing the prophets and the very faith he had scored so many worlds in the name of. And as this thought crossed his mind, a question itched at the back of his skull that he needed answering. Oracle, Thel began as the floating form pivoted on its axis to face him. The humans. Arbiter, Caesar interrupted. There are reports on this Phantom's communication system recording forces to make ready to leave this system. Leave? Why would the Prophet suddenly decide that the ruins of this halo were not worth at least scouring for holy relics? Is there any information regarding the destination? Not at this time, Arbiter, Caesar paused a moment. With respect, we cannot go far in a Phantom. What are our next steps? The appearance of an outlawed heretic within the Holy City is sure to incite a visceral response. Arbiter considered a moment. I have someone in mind who may afford us the means to expose the prophets for what they are, but it will take some convincing. Caesar sat at the controls of the Phantom as he piloted it through the transportation tunnels in the foundations of the Holy City. The choice to take a stolen Phantom directly to High Charity wasn't exactly his idea of a stealthy advance. He brought the Phantom through a final set of airlocks and pitched the ship upwards, accelerating before the ship was suddenly bathed in the light from the Holy City itself, and gently leaning the ship forward onto a cushion of air, he glided the ship deftly across the city as he closed with a large, gardened atrium, bringing the ship to a standstill meters away from the Special Operations Commander, Artas Vadum. He had been present on Threshold, assisting the Arbiter in his mission to quell the heretics. That is before Thel had severed the cables holding his fortress in the clouds. Artas had pursued the station's freefall into the gas giant for as long as he could, but it was Tartarus's Phantom that had managed to keep pace and thus be ready to extract him. Artas, then, was utterly unaware that Thel and Caesar were now tentative allies, and had left Tartarus for dead on the station. It was for this reason he remained in the cockpit of the Phantom with the door closed behind him, so that Thel and 343 could try to get through to him first. Despite the need to keep the Phantom moving and as unnoticeable as possible, he would still have preferred to be the one rallying more brothers to the cause. A dull thud vibrated through the deck, signalling that Artas was on board, and the gravity lift had been deactivated. Caesar quickly lifted clear and rejoined the busy traffic of the city. Arbiter, Artas barely began before noticing the floating orb accompanying the Arbiter. By the gods, the Holy Oracle, Artas said in awe, dropping to a knee, hand over his chest. Rise, Artas, we are short of time, Arbiter urged. Artas squinted warily at Thel and returned to a stand. Commander, the Oracle has divulged some information to us that confirms some uncomfortable truths. I believed what your friend is referring to is the purpose of the Halo installations, and your prophet's mistaken affirmations and manipulative tendencies that have led every last one of you on the path to self-assured destruction, the Oracle happily continued. I do not understand, Artas shook his head. Why have you not taken the Oracle to the Hierarchs? Where is Tartarus? What do you mean, us? Commander, Arbiter reconsidered. Artas, the Great Journey is a lie. The Halos are not the path to the divine beyond. They are weapons designed to kill all life in the galaxy. Impossible, Artas spat. Why would the gods create weapons of untold destruction and then simply abandon them? Why would the prophets willingly kill themselves as well as all of us? The parasite. They feed on any and all life they encounter. The halos destroy their food, Arbiter reasoned. They are weapons of last resort. The foreigners, the beings you refer to as gods, were quite mortal. They had a duty to protect all life in the galaxy. Last time the flood was set loose, it consumed nearly the entire galaxy. The foreigners used the only tool they had left to them to secure a future for life in this galaxy. To secure a future for all of you. They sacrificed themselves to see that life would return to its proper cadence. The Oracle filled in. If what you say is true, why has the Oracle within the Dreadnought not said this to the prophets? Oracle? Dreadnought? The Oracle seemed flustered. You have another monitor here? Yes, Holy Oracle. The one within the ship at the center of the city has been with us since the beginning of our covenant. He surely would have told the prophets the truth. Why would he lie? What would he have to gain? Artas answered. The Oracle bit back. I must see them immediately. I must assess if this monitor is in contravention of compartmentalization protocols to assess the possible security risk to the array. Arbiter was taken aback by the Oracle's sudden and rather forceful demands. That is not possible, Oracle. It is not probable, but it is possible, Artas interjected. I am not outwardly agreeing that this is the case, but if there is a chance the prophets are mistaken, we owe it to all members of the Covenant to ascertain the truth of this situation. I'm glad you are at least willing to cooperate, the Arbiter replied as he activated the door between the crew compartment and cockpit. Artas leaned around Thel's mass and spotted the pilot of the Phantom. Caesar nodded a response to Thel and craned his neck around to briefly make eye contact with Artas. Artas sighed. Someone is going to have to explain to me just what happened in that hangar. The Arbiter nodded. Take us to the Dreadnought. The Phantom came to a stop on a docking platform jutting out from a structure of the city. Out of the side climbed Thel Vadami, Caesar Refumi, Artas Vadumi, and a Holy Oracle. They quickly advanced towards the Dreadnought. They had chosen this particular angle to mount their infiltration of the Dreadnought due to it being in the deep shadows cast by the city and the ship itself, and due to this being a little known about entrance to some non-essential areas of the ship. 343 chirped with evident excitement. A key ship, one of the vessels the librarians set on the task of cataloguing all sentient life in the galaxy. I do hope its records are intact. Patience, Oracle. We may not have the time to linger here for long, Caesar replied. They quickly made their way inside and found the interior of the massive vessel basically empty of anyone. The Oracle quickly interfaced with systems of the ship and opened the relevant doors needed to continue their progress. Before long, they arrived at a large set of doors that the Oracle had identified as being a chamber with a slightly elevated energy consumption. The doors slid apart and several Sanshayim stewards turned their attention to the intruders. For a brief moment, they were stunned into silence by the presence of an Oracle, which the elites took quick advantage of and neutralized them before they had time to raise an alarm. The Oracle quickly floated towards the center console, where he comes to an abrupt stop. Identify yourself, a deep booming voice spoke. I am 343 Guilty Spark, monitor of Installation 04. The array is in jeopardy. The meddlers wish to activate the array due to some mistranslation of our creator's language. The Reclaimers are in danger. Who are you? Guilty Spark asked. I am a fragment, a shadow. I am the beggar after knowledge. The weapon our creators set upon the flood. The weapon that betrayed billions and loosed damnation on the stars. Mendicant bias. How can that be? Where do your allegiances lie? I have had but one thought for 100 millennia. Atonement. The Reclaimers are all that matters. They must be brought to the Ark. Humans and the meddlers are at war. The meddlers' ultimate goal is to fire the rings. These beings wish to avert this fate, but if we do not act quickly, there will be no reclaimers left to inherit the mantle. The Flood are to return. The reclaimers are all that matter. Reconnect me to... The ship's lights flickered, and the deep booming voice stopped, the three eyes of the Oracle flickering and going out. "We have entered slipspace," Guilty Spark announced. "It would appear that has taken Mendicant Bias offline for a time." The Prophet of Truth and Mercy looked out of the view screen upon the ruins of the Halo. From the inner sanctum, they weren't actually anywhere near the outer shell of High Charity, but the holographic displays made an impressively realistic job at appearing as a window looking out into the bittersweet vista of a fallen Halo. Their peace and quiet conversation was interrupted by the sounds of resistance and unrest beyond the doors. They pivoted their gravity thrones on the spot to face the source of the interruption as the doors parted, and the hulking, muscular form of Tartarus, chieftain of the brutes, marching quickly across to the Prophets, closely escorted by two elite honor guards, whom he had ignored, being told to wait for the Prophets to grant him access. He closed to just a few meters from the pair when he dropped to his knee. His white fur was singed at its edges, and his skin showed the blistered pockmarks of having taken plasma fire. "Noble Prophets of Truth and Mercy, I bring urgent word from the Heretic station." Truth motioned the guards to leave and returned his chair to the view screen while he waited for the doors to seal behind the guards. "What news of the Heretics that is so urgent you interrupt our quiet contemplation?" Tartarus stood. "The Arbiter has betrayed us. He stands in alignment with the Heretic leader and a holy oracle. They escaped the station." Truth held up a hand to silence him. "Do you know their current location?" "No, Holy One." "Leave us. Make ready your brutes. We leave to join the Prophet of Regret. He has located another Halo. Their betrayal is but a minor inconvenience. The time of ascendance is at hand." He pivoted back around to face Tartarus, and this time it will be the brutes who will be the Prophet's escorts. Tartarus grinned a wide smile, bowed his head, and left. Truth rubbed his temples with his hand, trying to work some of the stress that had no doubt formed in his brow. "This is a problem," Mercy spoke. "Not just the survival of the Heretic, but the Arbiter's betrayal. The Heretic was a problem, but not an insurmountable one. Thel was a problem, but as Arbiter he commands no fleets and thus poses us little more than an idle threat. But if they gain followers, if they do possess an oracle, this could be our undoing. Time is our ally, not theirs." Truth spoke matter-of-factly. "To gain any real traction, they'll need help from sympathetic hands. Resources are plenty, and a good deal of time to broker such an arrangement." Truth turned back to his fellow prophet, gliding his gravity throne across the distance to a few feet from his elder. "In mere moments we leave for another Halo. In mere hours the elites will be cleansed from the Covenant, and in mere days, brother, the great journey shall begin, and we will make gods of us all." "Oracle, you spoke of the humans. Of what significance are humanity?" Artas asked. "They are the children of my makers, inheritors of all they left behind. They are reclaimers. Your prophets mistranslated reclaimers to reclamation. Your entire theology is built upon a lie that the Halos send those who are worthy onto godhood. The Halos kill all life in the galaxy. Your species and humanity were reseeded in the silence that followed. So all these years we've been fighting and killing the children of the gods." Artas spat in sickening disbelief. The lights in the chamber flickered once again, returning to a steady glow once more. "We have arrived," Guilty Spark announced, puzzled. "I am picking up superluminal communications arrays. The pattern matches that of Installation 05. Oh my. The meddlers have located another Halo, and plan to light it. How asked Caesar. As if the very question tempted a response, open communication channels from the hierarchs snapped on. Today is a day of grief, a day of rejoice, a day of failure and of success, one of fire and ashes and being born anew. We receive word that the noble prophet of regret has been murdered. Humanity and their demon are to blame. But in this dark of his passing, he has shown us the light. His last act was to honor the halo we had located, and he has departed on the great journey ahead of us. His ascension to the divine beyond is to be celebrated, but a failure must be acknowledged. The very guards he had at his side to protect him on his holy work failed at their task. Thel stood disgusted at the words he was hearing. I cannot listen to these lies any longer. Connect me to the network. Guilty Spark quickly accessed several terminals and activated a communications line that tapped into the broadcast. The Oracle happily replied, the connection will be ready in a few moments. A hierarch is dead, and the elites failed at their sworn duty. Atop this, the Arbiter has been corrupted by the Heretics and now stands in opposition to the Covenant. The Council acknowledges that this is the third failing of the elites in as many days. Recent events have made it abundantly clear that the elites can no longer guarantee our safety. Members of the Covenant, I stand here with a holy oracle, Thel began. It has confirmed my deepest fears. The prophets do not understand what the halos really are. The great journey is a lie. They sent me to destroy a heretic, his only sin being that he knew the truth. They have manipulated and controlled us for far too long. As the Arbiter continued his counter to the prophet's lies, Artas opened a communications channel to his Special Operations Task Force. The Arbiter has set the wheels in motion. The elites, if nothing else, are to go to war. We must rally our brothers behind a powerful flagship. Send for our extraction and we shall move on to the Shadow of Intent. We will lead the assault from a vessel of prominence. Truth and Mercy had moved their gravity thrones through the chambers of the Forerunner ship and approached the Holy Oracle. Truth marveled at the sight of this inactive behemoth. Decades beforehand, before taking his position as the Hierarch of the Covenant, he had consulted the Oracle with his fellow would-be prophets, and had been made aware of their centuries-old fatal error in translation and the connection between humanity and their gods. Indeed, it was the only reason that this war with the humans was one of utter genocide and not a war of conquering and forced integration. The truth would have undermined the Covenant and led to its complete collapse. When they learned of this, the Oracle had attempted to leave High Charity with the massive ship. It threatened the very survival of the Holy City, but was fortuitously disconnected by some Legolo burrowing deep within the ancient machinery. It would appear the arrival of the Oracle did something to awaken it once more, and once again it was fortuitously disconnected by the power surge of the slipspace transition to the halo that Regret had found. With some of these systems now active again, perhaps some information could be extracted. Sanchayam stewards who had arrived before the prophets and had navigated their ways through the bodies of their fallen brothers had been accessing the systems and doing what they could to extract recently accessed information pertaining to this new halo. The archives had revealed something of great importance: the location of the ring's control room, and that of the sacred icon. Now the two remaining prophets were here to observe this information themselves and take their final steps towards the great journey. A steward approached them. Prophet of Truth, Prophet of Mercy, there is one final obstacle to the activation of the sacred ring. There is cryptic reference to reclamation in regards to enacting the great journey. We are still working to identify what this means. Outside, the muffled sounds of explosions and battle echoed. Elite forces were trying to take control of the Forerunner ship, but the prophets had preempted this tactic and placed loyal brute forces outside the ship to keep them at bay. It would likely not hold for long. Admittedly, Truth hadn't foreseen the grunts and hunters would side with the elites, bolstering their numbers considerably. Truth held up a hand to silence him. You have done well to recover this blessed information. The gods smile upon us even as they test us with this devastating blow to our covenant. Leave us, so we may enact the will of the gods. The steward curtly bowed, and with that the rest of the Sanshire filtered out, leaving only Mercy, Truth, and the dominating mass of Tartarus, his white fur still sooted and greyed by his previous encounter with the Arbiter. He moved towards the prophets and paused, as the scent of an intruder assaulted his nostrils. Tartarus sniffed the air and turned, quickly scanning the area around him. He noticed a gentle waver in the air, and the hushed rasping of armour moving. He brought his gravity hammer to bear, struck the ground, and created a discharge of electricity through the air. This interfered with the camouflage systems of a special operations elite. Tartarus hefted the head of his hammer, activating a gravity field, and pulled the elite through the air towards him, and then struck him with such force as to knock the elite 20 meters back towards the door. The elite struck the wall and slumped to the floor motionless. Satisfied, he turned back towards the prophets. You are to travel to the ring. Send Brute to secure the control room and personally head the team to acquire the sacred icon. Mercy has kindly spared his cruiser Mercy and Reconciliation. Take it and see our will be done. Take heed, the humans have followed the Prophet of Regret here. They are seeking the same thing we are. Spare 2 of them. Kill the rest. Time grows short and we have much to accomplish. What of the Arbiter, the Heretic, and the elites? Tartarus practically growled. The Covenant is breaking. The path is unstable. This betrayal is but a final, bitter curse, and will mean nothing when we start the great journey. Step into the light and burn all those who are unworthy. He is no matter. Revenge will come with your success. Tartarus was dissatisfied with this answer, but he knew better than to question the prophets, and fell to a knee. My faith is strong. I will not fail. Tartarus spoke. Several brutes entered the room moments later and escorted Truth and Mercy out, with Tartarus following closely behind, preparing his orders for his troops. Artas ran through the final brute on the bridge. It gargled and fell to the ground. He stepped over the corpse with no further consideration and took control of the Shadow of Intent. He activated the bridge displays and opened communications. The various feeds from around the ship, as well as chatter from the fleets and from within High Charity, filled the bridge. The city was in all-out civil war. The elites had risen against the Covenant, and blood was being spilled across space in the midst of the sacred ring. The Arbiter stepped past him and gazed upon the screens as a direct communication feed opened to the Shadow of Intent. Commander, a pained voice came over the communications feed. Commander, they know the location of the ring's control room and a means to activate it. If what you say is right, they are about to end life in this quadrant. They must be stopped. Artas replied, Brother, are you injured? Where are the prophets now? The voice, still pained, replied once more, My time has come, brother. I remained in place as per your orders. I was found. They have left. Tartarus is leading his troops on the ring as we speak. Mercy's cruiser. Stop them. Stop them. The line went quiet. Artas waited a moment and then bowed his head, knowing yet another one of his brothers were gone. He scanned the local area and found the location of Mercy and Reconciliation, a CCS-class battlecruiser holding position above the ring. Thel stepped forward. That must be where the control room is. We must get inside. Mount up, Arbiter. The brute shall die for the blood they have spilt. The Phantom sped through the atmosphere towards the control room. As it approached the shore, the looming form of a CCS-class battlecruiser came into view. Its point defense lasers activated and filled the air with streaks of purple light. Caesar did well to keep the Phantom dancing, deftly dodging and banking to avoid the incoming fire, but he wasn't nearly fast enough. A bolt of plasma struck the Phantom near the rear, damaging one of its thrusters. The Phantom dropped in altitude suddenly, skimming the water below. This was not of concern to Caesar, as the rapidly approaching cliff face was a much more immediate issue. "This may not be a soft landing," Caesar called out as he wrestled with the Phantom to keep it in the air. "Steel yourselves, this will be unpleasant." Caesar wrestled the Phantom to gain altitude. He rolled the Phantom over, angling its one good thruster towards the water, and pushed the steering yoke forward to increase thrust. The Phantom nosed up, the view screen now filled with a sheer face of rock, and struck the very tip of the cliff face, biting a large chunk of rock and soil from the cliff in the process. The Phantom jerked violently, throwing Thel and Artas across the hold. Gravity inverted as the Phantom tumbled across the ground end over end, before finally coming to an abrupt stop against yet another cliff face. Artas and Thel came to their senses and climbed out of the Phantom, which was now a torn-up mess of hull plating and circuitry. The nose of the Phantom was now a crumpled mass, pushed backward into the body of the ship. What would have been the cockpit was now so compressed and contorted, it was with nearly complete certainty that Caesar had not made it. Thel rested a hand onto the hull of the Phantom. "Thank you, brother, for opening my eyes and setting us on the true path." "Arbiter," Artas called. "We should use this scarab to cover the ground between us and the control room. We are short of time enough as it is." Thel nodded and readied his weapon.
Sure as hell don't like you. But if we don't do something, Mr. Mohawk's gonna activate this ring. And we're all gonna die.
Tartarus has locked himself inside the control room.
Well, I just happen to have a key.
Come on, grab a banshee and give me some cover. Gonna know what's coming.
Come, human. It is easy. Take the icon in your hands and do as you are told.
Please use caution. This reclaimer is delicate.
One more word, Oracle, and I'll rip your eye from its socket. Which is nothing compared to what I'll do to you. Tartarus, stop. Impossible. Put down the icon. Put it down and disobey the Hierarchs? There are things about Halo even the Hierarchs do not understand. Take care, Arbiter. What you say is heresy. Is it? Oracle, what is Halo's purpose?
Collectively, the seven.
Not another word.
Please. Don't shake the light bulb. If you want to keep your brain inside your head, I tell those boys to chill. Go ahead. Do your thing.
The sacred rings, what are they?
Weapons of last resort, built by the Forerunners to eliminate potential flood hosts, thereby rendering the parasite harmless.
And those who made the rings? What happened to the Forerunners?
After exhausting every other strategic option, my creators activated the rings. They and all additional sentient life in 3 radii of the Galactic Center died as planned. Would you like to see the relevant data?
Tartarus, the prophets have betrayed us. No, Arbiter! The great journey has begun, and the brutes, not the elite, shall be the prophet's escort.
Despite scoring some lucky strikes, Thel couldn't find the opening to get close and past his shields to strike the killing blow. Overhead, 3 shots from the human's beam rifle took down Tartarus' shields. Thel was at the teetering edge of his ability to close the gap in time, but he took it. He lunged forward with all the speed he could muster, bringing his energy sword to bear. He drived his legs to move as fast as they could possibly move, and at the last possible moment he dived, closing the final distance, and swung the sword aggressively at Tartarus' centre mass. The sword sliced deeply across his chest, but Tartarus shrugged it off and swiped him aside with a backswing of his hammer. The rippling gravity hammer threw him only a few meters into a wall, striking it with an aggressive stop at the base of his skull. He felt vertigo and his vision dissolved to grey. Tartarus swung his hammer again to deal with 3 more elites that had approached him to try to take him down, the rippling energy of his mighty hammer making it almost too easy. He turned quickly to find Arbiter still on the ground where he left him. He took 5 large steps towards him, raising his hammer as he did, when a blue flash startled him and he came to a forced stop. One of his arms gave way under its own weight and he lazily dropped the hammer to the ground. He looked down to find a glowing energy sword plunged to its handle into his chest. The air rippled and revealed the white-armoured Special Operations Commander stood before him, green eyes glistening with hate. Tartarus grabbed Artas by the throat and lifted him clean off the ground, squeezing as he did. Artas let go of his sword and gagged as he struggled under the vice-like grip. As Tartarus walked his wriggling body towards the edge of the control room's hovering platforms, Artas attempted to reach for the blade still in his chest, but the grip on his throat tightened and he reflexively tried to release it. The platform below him fell away to a void below, as Tartarus held him with an outstretched arm over the edge. A bloody fate awaits you and the rest of your incompetent race, and I, Tartarus, chieftain of the brutes, will send you to it. Not before I send you to yours, Thel's voice spoke from behind him. Before Tartarus could even turn to face him, Thel swung his own energy sword low, slicing both of Tartarus' trunk-like legs out from under him. With nothing now holding him up, he screamed out in agony, his body now tumbling off of his now severed legs, his weight rolling forwards, and he fell from the platform. Thel leapt forwards with an outstretched hand and made contact with Artas's. Tartarus' grip slipped loose, and he fell into the void, howling as he went. Thel struck the platform chest first, now hanging the weight of Artas dangling free over the edge. Artas looked down to see Tartarus' body slam into the steep-faced floor of the control room. The impact likely killed him, but if that didn't, the roll and tumble into the energy beam emitting from deep below definitely did. Thel pulled Artas back up onto the platform, and they both stood as the female human removed the icon from the core.
What's that?
A beacon,
What's it doing?
communicating at superluminal speeds with the frequency of
Communicating with what?
the other installations.
Show me.
Fail-safe protocol. In the event of unexpected shutdown, the entire system will move to standby status. All remaining platforms are now ready for remote activation.
Remote activation? From here?
Don't be ridiculous.
Listen, Tinkerbell, don't make me...
Then where? Where would someone go to activate the other rings?
Why the Ark? Of course.
And where, Oracle, is that?
This is Spartan 117.
Anyone hear me? Over.
Isolate that signal. Master Chief, you mind telling me what you're doing on that ship?
Sir, finishing this fight.
This was a collaboration with Reclaimer Gaming. I really enjoyed exploring this narrative and letting some of my more modest writing work wander. Reclaimer Gaming, you set the stage and I ran with it. I must admit I did a few versions of this script and I like this one most because it fits well within the established lore and moves through into Halo with no major plot issues. Nevertheless, I really enjoyed this, so thanks for thinking of me and getting me involved with this. If you aren't familiar with Reclaimer Gaming, you'll find links to his channel in the description, and be sure to pop over to show him some love. And if you're watching this before seeing his video on setting the stage, so to speak, you'll find a link to that below too. And that leaves me to say, thanks for watching. Stick your comments down below, I look forward to what you have to say. I want to give a quick shout out to my patrons and YouTube members Neek the Solid Cartographer, Siphonic Storm and Todd Morrison, my Tier 0 Transcendients, Brian, Sebastian, Darian, Red Sea, Stalk of the Realms, Falcon X003, Starlight, Alvin, Flaming Halo, Josh, Legions Lost, Kyle, Cat Erdicam, Schneidish, Leon, Ignizzle, Chris, Cooper, Prophet, and Devon, the holders of the mantle, my glorious Reclaimers, my loyal Metarchs, and all the other patrons and YouTube members that have jumped aboard to support the channel. Much love to you guys, thanks so much for your support. It's keeping things happening and helping development of the channel and future awesomeness in a big way. If you like Halo lore discussed to insane levels of detail, hit that subscribe button and the little bell icon so you're told the second a new video hits the shelves. Be sure to support us on all major social media channels, including Discord, and if you really love the channel, consider heading over to Patreon and supporting the channel over there, or jumping on as a channel member. It means the world to me and affords you loads of great perks and bonuses, while also helping work towards some awesome stuff in the near and distant future. Take it easy everyone, and find peace in the domain.